All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Teaching Freedom with Scott McEwen, and I am your co-host, Chris Sinog. Dr. Chris Sinog now, by the way.
Doctor.
Very, very important. Must say not a medical doctor, and you shouldn't construe anything that I say in any way as
Medical advice?
As medical advice or any advice at all. I like to say I'm not licensed in any state for any reason.
There you go.
But yeah, today it's February 11th, 2021. And we're going to be talking about the impeachment trial that's going on right now, aka the Kangaroo Court. And I got a fly attacking me. And then we're going to, at the end, talk about Scott's new book coming out in May 18th, and it is Hell Week. So we'll be talking about that. So anyways, let's get into this this impeachment trial that's going on right now. And tell us what's going on, Scott.
Well, from my perspective as a recovering lawyer, I think that there's some very interesting and important notes that have to be taken by Americans that believe in this country, that believe in the Constitution, that believe in the way the Constitution was written for a reason. And the first note that we need to take on the second impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump is that it's unprecedented. Absolutely, in 240 years plus years of our country's history, we have never, ever seen anything like this. And you say, well, why is that? This is just a procedure going on that is put in the Constitution. Well, no, it's not, and it's not for several reasons. Because this president is no longer sitting. Impeachment was meant to be a summary procedure in order to remove the President of the United States or a federal official from office by virtue of the Senate of the United States voting on it. Now, there's some provisions of impeachment that are absolutely required. And the first and foremost of that is, and we've seen it in recent history, is in the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump, we had the then presiding justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, still presiding, Roberts, come over from the Supreme Court and actually sit as the presiding judge at the trial, which is the jurisdictional requirement in the Constitution of the United States. But Mr. Roberts, Justice Roberts, is significantly absent from this trial. And the American people must query, first and foremost, why is the required Supreme Court justice absent from the trial? In fact, no Supreme Court justice is attending, let alone the presiding justice of the Supreme Court. And the reason is because they know this is unconstitutional, in my opinion. They absolutely understand that this proceeding is, in fact, a kangaroo court by the Democrats to try and bring across a point, which we're going to get to later, Chris, on what they're really doing here. But I think the first thing that America must understand is that the Supreme Court has already voted by action on the proceeding that's going on, that it is unconstitutional, as they have absolutely refused to be involved in the proceeding. Yeah, and I think that's significant.
Yeah, and if the head justice is not presiding over this trial, this impeachment trial, that in itself makes it unconstitutional. I mean, by the letter of the law, it says the Chief Justice has to preside over it. So if that part is missing, it like you said, it's a kangaroo court. And for those who don't know what a kangaroo court is, it's just made up fun. And it's something that we did in the SEAL teams. And it's actually a lot of fun as long as you're not the person on trial on trial in the kangaroo court, because when we did it, there was a lot of alcohol involved, and after hours, not during working hours, of course, but you'd be in trouble for something silly, and people would make up whatever evidence they wanted, and
The punishment was oftentimes physical and summary.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody would be taped up and put in a deep freezer for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it has nothing to do with actual law.
And that's exactly what we have going on here. And I would defy anyone to look at this differently. And in fact, one might query, well, if the Supreme Court justice that's required by the Constitution refuses to oversee this proceeding, then who is overseeing this proceeding? If we're having a real kangaroo court, who would oversee it? Well, okay, let's try and get the biggest, longest standing, and I'm hesitant to use the term prostitute, but I will, member of the Senate, Leahy, and I'm not talking about Jim Leahy from the venerable Trailer Park Boys. I'm not putting down Jim here. I'm talking about Patrick Leahy is overseeing this kangaroo court as the, quote, presiding justice. And once again, there is zero constitutional basis for them to do so, but they still proceed in this fashion. And we must wonder what exactly they're trying to do by this kangaroo court. And I think maybe that's the better question. And at the end of the day, I believe that they're trying to put on trial every American that backed Donald Trump at any point in time during his presidency. And whether we as Americans might disagree with some of his language, not relating to this case, because I think this case is clean as far as what he asked people to do and what he did not ask people to do. But they're basically saying to all of us that supported Donald Trump at any point in time that first we were deplorable. Now they're referring to us during this proceeding as insurrectionists is their big thing. If you watch these proceedings, that's their new thing. It's the insurrectionists. But maybe we're just patriots, and maybe we believe in the things that Donald Trump supported. And the man might have had his flaws, and I'm the first one to say it. I supported him, and he had his flaws. But I do believe in the message that he had, and I do believe in America first, and I do believe in those things that all of these Democrats want to basically throw in the trash heap and criminalize, i.e. refer to as insurrectionists, for our thoughts that those are bad things to put America first. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and one thing they're doing too with that is putting us in, just lumping us together in the same group of people as if, half of this country went into the Capitol building, and we're all the same. And the fact is, it wasn't just Trump supporters that went in that building, right? There's other people, other groups on that we could say were on their side, that were really part of the biggest problem.
Yeah. And a lot of them have been arrested, and you haven't heard a word about that from the FBI or these other groups that are out hunting people down with videotapes, et cetera, which I never saw that happen with the Antifa and the BLM riots. I never saw the people that were burning these buildings being hunted down in earnest for their physical, arson and the other things they did. I just never saw it. Maybe I was missing something. I'm being facetious. They didn't do it. The bottom line is, there was groups that were interspersed in this, which probably should have been anticipated and by the law enforcement. But, I personally believe law enforcement wanted this. And I think that there was a certain element of law enforcement that did not stop this when they could have. I've seen many clips of fences being opened to protesters getting closer to the Capitol building. I've seen a lot of very nefarious things, and I'm not being conspiratorial. I mean, there is a lot of footage that showed that there were marks missed where they could have stopped this crowd from getting as close as they did. And I want to be very clear. I've got no time for armed protesters taking on the Capitol building of the United States. I got no time for non-armed protesters trying to infringe upon government offices or anything else to do violence. I have no time for that whatsoever. Neither does Chris. I know this for a fact, because it doesn't help our cause, their cause, or the United States. At the end of the day, it does nothing but diminish our cause in our belief in this country. And I think that that's exactly what they wanted, and that's what they're doing with these proceedings.
Yeah, so you talk about footage, and we're talking about facts, and one of the things that supposedly the only thing they're using for saying that President Trump incited this violence was his speech that he was giving. So let's just listen to his exact words when he was giving this speech.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
All right, so there we just heard in the president's own words exactly what he wanted the people to do that were there with him, the people he was speaking to. He tells them, we are going to, go down and peacefully
and patriotically make our voices heard.
And somehow in this trial, they're trying to say, yeah, listen to what he had to say. Well, if you listen to what he had to say, he made it very clear, peacefully. You can't, and now they're trying to turn that into insurrection and inciting violence, and literally nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, and I think, what's important is as a former trial lawyer and recovering lawyer, you try to accurately, give the jury what actually took place. And I'd like to think that, the reason I was successful and the people that taught me to be successful as a trial lawyer is because I didn't BS juries. I really didn't. And I was never caught doing that. And, and when I say caught, they don't like it. They don't like it when you get caught lying to them, when you exaggerate, extrapolate, use language from other proceedings, use actions of other people to, if you will, criminalize the activity of your client. And I was never a criminal lawyer. I was a civil lawyer, and I represented big corporations generally. But there was always a tactic by the other side to try and make us look like the big bad guy. And one of the things they would do would be to use incidents that had nothing to do with the incident at hand, that used other, if you will, language, things of that nature from other proceedings, other whatever, and try and mix them together with the actual proceeding you're doing, and conflate, i.e. put together. Conflate means to put together things that have no relationship. And that's exactly what these people are doing in this proceeding, with the impeachment. And you can tell by their language that they're trying to use inflammatory acts of other people, that they're trying to use the Michigan incident where the governor of Michigan was threatened or supposedly threatened by a group of people to be kidnapped or some crazy stuff that was going on there, that all of that stuff was in fact part of what they should have anticipated was going to take place in Washington, D.C. Now that's where the danger is, because I'm telling you right now, not only did it not happen, and I think that facts mean something and reality means something, but for them to try and conflate, put those things together, and then, if you will, demonize and try the former president of the United States on things that had nothing to do with him is absolutely unfair.
Yeah, I think it's if it wasn't so sad, it'd be funny type thing. Where I watched the very opening of this the other day, and whoever it was, I don't know who these clowns are, but the first guy to speak, he started off saying, I'm not going to be here, like trying to, show you things and connect dots and put things together, whatever. We are just going to stick to the president's own words. And from that point forward, all he talked about was he started showing videos of, the people going into the Capitol building. He, showing all these videos.
He kept that lie going for about 30 seconds.
Yeah, videos, how crazy it was and how terrible it was. And yeah, it was terrible. But, he's just working on getting people's emotions up. And it had nothing to do with, what he said he was going to. I'm going to stick to the president's own words. Yeah. And then, he didn't, because if he sticks to his own words, just like we saw in that clip of his own words, President Trump's own words, he said peacefully.
You will not be hearing extended lectures from me because our case is based on cold, hard facts. It's all about the facts.
Yeah, and to take that and then, change that to the fashion and to the avarice, to the bad acts, to the immoral behavior of bad actors is no different than than Maxine Waters or possibly even the Vice President of the United States telling people to get in the face of Republicans and telling people that these protests, i.e. riots, are going to continue and threatening the United States populace by doing so, except for they were supporting, in my estimation, things that had already taken place that were illegal, whereas the president was not supporting any illegal act that had taken place, nor was he ever fomenting that to take place again. And that's the difference. And maybe that's what we should talk about, is what preceded this. What is the real hypocrisy of this proceeding that's going on here? Because when the Democrats do it, it's okay. But when the Republicans do it, it's bad.
All right, so we just listened in the president's own words. They're saying his words incited violence when he said peacefully and patriotically, move down to the Capitol building and let our voices be heard. Let's hear what now Vice President Harris had to say.
I know that there are protests still happening in major cities across the United States. I'm just not seeing the reporting on it that I had
that's right.
for the first few weeks.
That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
All right. So what she's saying is that she says she's supporting the protests. I got to say the protests in quotes, because although it wasn't on the news or most news channels, those protests were anything but peaceful, and everybody knows it. And there's tons of video. Were there peaceful protests? Sure, of course there were. But there were, hundreds and hundreds of protests. What she's talking about is she is saying she supports people that are burning down buildings, that are killing people, that are seeing somebody with a MAGA hat on and physically assaulting them. All of these things, she said protests. She didn't say riots, but they were riots. And these actions by these anti-Trump groups and BLM, all of these groups, she says she supports it and they should keep going.
Yeah, and that's the language that we saw all summer leading up to this election in November. And it was one of the Democratic strategies, and if people want to dispute this, I don't care. You'd have to be, I believe, not very intelligent to not see what was going on. And what was going on was there were a group of people that were interspersed with, with violent intent in, people that were probably 90% of whom were probably, just trying to protest certain things that had taken place. And when I say the group of people, I mean Antifa and BLM were looting, burning. I mean, I can drive 5 minutes from where we're now seated to La Mesa. They burned down the bank. They burned down several other buildings right there. They basically looted and robbed from all the stores in that area. They did all these things, but that's just one place. That's here in San Diego. I mean, Portland and Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, which I'm from Oregon, and I have a lot of friends that live in Portland, were under assault. And I'm not talking about semi-assault. I'm talking about assault every night for over 100 days this summer. And they're still under assault. The Antifa is still doing their thing, still burning and looting. The federal building in Portland was literally under assault to the point where they had to install federal officers there because of the firebombs that were nightly being thrown in their direction, Molotov cocktails, high explosive incendiaries, everything you can imagine, shootings, lootings, all these things were taking place every day. And these were the protests that we saw leading up to this election. It was planned. It was not dealt with by the governors in those states or the mayors in those states. Inslee and the mayor of Seattle, I can't remember her name. She's to be forgotten, should be forgotten. But that being said, I mean, allowed these things to happen. They allowed places in their cities to be taken over by these protesters and basically looted and burned inside these cities, to the point of where they actually had their own zones set up, the CHOP zone, things of this nature. So let's not forget history, folks. And did they call in the National Guard for those events? Did they actually try and retake control of those cities or those streets? No, they didn't. And why not? Because these were protests, and these protests will continue until the election. This was the Democratic plan from day one.
Yeah, and all of that with in her own words, the support of the current Vice President of the United States.
These are facts. You can cut it, you can wrap it however you want to do it. So, and I think the difference has to be made factually between what happened with Trump and with this situation in Washington, D.C. versus what we saw. What they were describing was factually, these had already taken place. These burnings, lootings, killings, everything was ongoing, but they were called protests. Whereas Trump said, we got a group of people here. He had experienced many people at his rallies in the past, hundreds of thousands of people at his rallies in the past. There was never any violence. And he said, we want you to peacefully go over and make your voices heard. And there's a big difference there because we had not had experienced that within those groups that were, if you will, from the Republican side at all, period. And I defy anyone to tell me one of the Trump rallies where there was any of those type of incidents, because there weren't. The only incidents that ever took place is when the people were leaving the Trump rallies, they would be assaulted by these left-wing operatives, if you will, brown shirts from Antifa, BLM, etc.
All right, I want to play another clip right now from Maxine Waters, and I just want to watch this and let's compare it to, again, what they're saying, former President Trump, how he incited violence. So let's listen to this.
This is a Democratic congressman from California.
If we can't protect the children, we can't protect anybody. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome. The people are going to turn on them. They're going to protest. They're going to absolutely harass them until they decide that they're going to tell the president, no, I can't hang with you.
Not in D.C. Not in the U.S. Not in D.C. Not in the U.S. Not in D.C. Not in the U.S.
All right, so once again, if we're going back and we're going to use people's own words, it sounds a lot more like she is in support of violence. In fact, she didn't tell people to peacefully make your voice heard. She says, form a group or a crowd around these people, get in their faces, and let them know they are not welcome. So anybody that doesn't get in line with their viewpoints, they should not be wanted. So apparently half of this country, according to Maxine Waters, should be, violently protested against. But how come nobody's, talking about this?
No, she didn't get charged. She hasn't been impeached. In fact, she's still doing her thing. So, and still making the same comments. She's made comments today against Trump that I thought were violent as well. So, I mean, it's not ending. Their rhetoric begins and keeps on going. But if someone asks for people to peacefully approach the congressional houses, you better watch out because you're going to get impeached for doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they are, again, they're on record saying things like we need to be put in camps. So like me and you, we need, because, we support Trump. We don't, support these socialists. And we need to be deprogrammed.
Katie Couric. Katie yourself.
Yeah.
Miss Left Winger.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump? The garbage that they are being fed 24/7 on the internet by their constituents, and they bought into this big lie. And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump?
Well, she's not the only one that's saying this either. I mean, they all are.
The Trumpist cult, and we have to be deprogrammed. Do you have any idea how we start that process, much less complete it?
Yeah, I don't. I'm a journalist. I certainly don't know how we can stop people. I know we can look to history, though.
We have to start seriously addressing the question of how to deprogram nearly 75 million Trumpists. This is not a trivial matter. This is not easy to do. I've said before, Trump will go, but the Trumpists will still be here. The Trumpism.
When I wrote the Cult of Trump book in 2019, I said, if he doesn't get reelected, there's going to be violence. Let's not forget Jim Jones and what happened when he was exposed. He ordered not only the killing of Congressman Leo Ryan, but his followers as well.
A retail strategy of convincing individuals that their views are misguided is just too time consuming. I had this caller to my show last week who said, David, I did it. I deprogrammed one Trumpist. And I said, yeah, well, how long did it take? And the guy said it took 3 hours. So as you can see, 3 hours times 75 million, that's a problem.
Trump critic and Republican strategist John Weaver said the GOP is not a party anymore in the traditional sense. It's a cult.
So nearly half the country is a cult. That's weird. We'll call it America. In that cult, people believe in free thinking, truth, and justice. It's their way. I mean, usually a cult is defined as a smaller, extreme group that demands allegiance and secrecy, kind of like CNN.
If I had a real friend who was involved in a cult, which I feel it is cultish behavior, I must try to help them. So he lies to people and they believe it. And so what is that? Cultish behavior, and I think a lot of people need to be deprogrammed right now before they cast their next ballot.
Well, it's hard to agree on solutions.
The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it.
And they believe it too. They're like, oh, there must be something wrong with these people that they don't support our views.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, and it's not ending with this. This is, this is not their end game. This is them leading up to.
Yeah. They're going to make any speech that they disagree with, insurrection speech, violent speech. They're going to characterize anything that comes from any different from their, if you will, socialist mantra, in my estimation. They will use in order to criminalize, at least marginalize, if not use for an excuse to do many other things that we're seeing on social media, in publication, in basically in the world of free flow of information, to say that anything that supports this ideal of Trump is in fact illegal.
Yeah, and it's not even just the support of Trump. It is not directly. It's if you are a supporter of Trump, we're going to take your voice down.
Right.
And we talked about it in one of our last shows about me and my books from Amazon. These big players in the industry, they don't want, they don't even want me to make money, selling books, because they want to bring my voice down. And they're doing it across, we've heard about it on social media, like you mentioned, and YouTube channels getting shut down, and Facebook getting shut down, Parler, just getting unplugged completely. But now, and we were talking about this before we started, which I didn't know, they're doing it into publications.
Yeah, all major publishing companies, or the majority of major publishing companies on the face of the planet, are controlled by a very few, if you will, groups out of New York. And as of 3 weeks ago, anyone that I'm aware of that backed Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form, some of the most, if you will, noteworthy that have come out by the press, of Josh Hawley and a few other senators like that who had books coming out. But anybody who's written books on Donald J. Trump or on the Trump ideals or anything related to him, even the messaging of Trump, have now been canceled. You will not see those books coming out from the major publishers.
Well, you were saying that even if they weren't revolved around Trump, the book wasn't about Trump in any way. Just if they were supporters of Trump, that it could have been a book on gardening.
Yeah, we've seen those people, their works being canceled. And it's really a tragedy, and I think it's a very dangerous point in our history because, I guess it's not book burning, it's abortion. It's book abortion, if you will. They're not even the book isn't even being created now in their world that have these supports of, if you will, Trump ideals. They're just basically not even getting created. And so it's an interesting time in history, a very, very difficult one in my estimation, and dangerous.
Yeah. It's like freedom of speech as long as you say this right here.
Exactly.
If you say anything different than we want you to say, well, then you're evil.
Yeah.
And of course it needs to be shut down.
Yeah, it has to be. Because in their world, any diversions from their messaging is by definition heretic and anti their message, and therefore it cannot compete in the ideals, if you will, the marketplace of ideals, because it won't even be born. It won't even be allowed. And that is not what this country is about. That's not what the Constitution is about. That's not what the First Amendment is about. And I think all people, I don't care if you're RD, LGBTQ, whatever, ask not for whom the bell tolls, because one day it'll toll for you. And maybe it's tolling now for the if you will, the right side, the Trump side, whatever that side is. But one day in the future, it'll toll for the other side too. And that's the real danger.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think that this impeachment trial is going to be successful. No. I think they knew that going into this, right? You need 66?
Yeah, you need 2/3
to be able to convict him, and there's just no way that's going to happen.
Nor would it pass constitutional muster. I think it would then would go directly to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would say this thing is completely heretic.
They'd be like, "Hey, you noticed we weren't there."
Yeah. So I don't think that's their goal. I don't think that's their goal.
So what is it?
Their goal is to basically put in the public mind that anyone who supported Donald Trump is a, quote, insurrectionist, as you will see repeated over and over again during this thing, that a deplorable, that your ideals are deplorable, you backed a deplorable man, and somehow diminish the policies that not only that were so successful for Donald Trump, energy independence, United States, bring jobs back to this country, a very strong view on the world stage versus Iran, China, things of this nature. All those things that Donald Trump, borders, border wall, language, that type of thing, that all those things were so bad that if you believe in those, then you too are part of this, quote, insurrectionist group. And that's really, I can see no other messaging that they're trying to do here, Chris, because they're not going to be successful in this impeachment.
Yeah, I mean, they're just shutting everything down that Trump did. And it's kind of off topic a little bit, but before he took office, Biden made it very clear that executive orders should be extremely few and far between, and that's, the sign of a dictator, in his own words.
Literally.
That's what he said. And he's been in office, I don't know, too long already, but it was last week I was watching something about his executive orders, and he's done 4 times the number of executive orders than the last 3 presidents combined.
I saw the statistic in the first week alone. Trump had 5, I believe. Obama had 9, and that could be vice versa. I mean, maybe that was the other way, but I believe that's the way it was. One had 5, the other had 9. Biden had 37 in the first week.
I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion, we are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
And that tells you something, folks. That tells you something. Not only does it tell you the shape of things to come and the way that he's trying to govern, but, if you will, by his own term as a dictator, but also what we're going to see coming in the future before this mess, I believe, is voted out in 4 years. Yeah,
it's not looking good, but like you said, it's going to come around, on these guys, and I don't think America has taken its last breath just yet.
No. No, I'm positive. You got to be positive. I mean, it's not a good time. I think it's a difficult time for us, but I'm not backing down. You're not backing down. And we still support those things that are America. And we encourage all of you to do the same and to defy their ability to say that you don't have the right to do that, period.
Yeah, and one way that people can do that is to support the voices that are not on the left, and support people like you and your book coming out, Hell Week, which is, we'll do a little plug here for it, but it's on Amazon right now. It's available for pre-order, coming out on May 18th. So let's, if you don't mind, Scott, can we just talk a little bit about the book?
Yeah, this book was kind of an amalgamation of stories. Chris is quoted in there, as well as many other Navy SEALs that I've known that I put together over a period of years. And, each of us goes through our own Hell Week. And, maybe it's not the same as the Navy SEALs, but there will be a time when we're tested. And all of us go through a time when we're tested. And I find that Navy SEALs, when they go through their tests later on in their life, because many times I don't know these guys when they're going through the Hell Week, because you guys are SEALs for some time before I actually got to know you. But I always thought that those rationales and those ideals that were beaten into you during Hell Week are very, long-standing and really help you later on in life. In other words, the beliefs, the lessons that you learn during that BUDS training and during particularly Hell Week, when you realize that you can take so much more than you thought you could take, and there's probably always another 30% in the gas tank, as many SEALs have told me. Just when you think you're at the end and you're beaten down and your body is completely done, believe it or not, you've got 30% more in that tank. And that's all. The only thing you need to do to get to that reserve is mentally believe that you do have it. And so that's really what this book is about. There's been a lot of books written on Hell Week and on Navy SEAL Hell Week and everything else, but this one's different. And it really kind of it's done in the second person. And I've taken all of the stories from the days of Hell Week and basically put the reader into that place in a second person as opposed to first person. It's not told by that person. It's told saying, this is what they did to you next. This is where your body feels. This is how you're breaking down. This is the chaff. This is the cold. This is the things that you have to go through to do this. And what are you going to do with it? And I've taken all those things and kind of put them together in one group of ideals, beliefs, as well as the grit and the actual reality of doing sand donuts on the beach, at 3 a.m. on the 5th day of never sleeping, that kind of a thing. And so I've quoted many different guys and got many different sources here. Ryan Zinke, yourself, Ed Heiner, many different, people that I've worked with and known in the past, and tried to put this together. And it was sent recently to a friend of mine who's a producer up in Hollywood, and he looked at it and he read through it and he told me something that I did not expect. And because it starts out with a kid that's 17 that basically says, I'm not going to that college. I'm not taking this girlfriend and marrying her. I'm not going to do the things that everybody thought I was going to do. I'm going to become a Navy SEAL. And basically extricating himself from everything in society that he had known, the plan, everything else, and saying, no, I'm going in this direction. I'm taking a right turn and I'm going in this direction and leaving all those things behind, at least for a while. And I'm going to go do this. And the guy came back to me and he said, this is like a creation story of a superhero, that the superhero being the Navy SEAL that ultimately comes out the other side with American Sniper, with, the Lone Survivor, this type of movie that people are aware of. But this is the Batman story of the creation of, if you will, that superhero and how they get to that point. And I was very proud to hear that, if you will, critique of the book, because he's like, yeah, dude, this is really good stuff. He really enjoyed it because it kind of takes and puts you in that person's footsteps and saying, this is what I wanted to do. And, it was a fun piece. Took a long time to write, but I hope it helps people get through things because it's helped me. And, I start out with my Hell Week experience at the very beginning of the book, which is basically when Chris was killed. And, in Texas, and when I heard the news, and it really struck me deeply to have that news given to me, and I was feeling at that time that, hey, I made this guy famous, and therefore I got him killed, and so it was a lot of, if you will, personal guilt, remorse, all those things you feel when you're like, dude, I made this guy famous, and some guy shot him because he's famous, and I'm responsible for that, and so it's kind of personal reflection of my own Hell Week going through that and coming out of that when, I had one of his, one of his Master Chiefs come up to me and say, look, dude, I feel like I'm responsible. And he looks at me and he says, dude, I put guys in positions on battle lines, and 30 seconds later, a minute later, they get shot in the head and killed. And he said, I put them there. I put them in that spot where I was just at for the last hour. I put them there to relieve me, and they get killed. And he looks at me and he says, dude, it ain't on you. When it's your number, when it's your time, it's your time. And we have to look at it like that as SEALs. We all make that decision to do this thing. And maybe it wasn't Chris's time in that battlefield, but this was his time. And so don't put that on you, because somebody wrote that somewhere, and it wasn't you that wrote it. In other words, that book was written from heaven, or whatever place Chris is at now. And so, it really helped me. And he said, we all make that decision when we decide to be SEALs. When we go through Hell Week, when we go through BUDS and we decide to be SEALs and we make it, we realize at any given time it can end. Yeah. And so it was really helped me out because I was feeling a lot of personal responsibility for that stuff. And he just basically just put me on, up against the bar and said, look, dude, you can't do it. I could do that. I could tear myself apart. Any officer, any higher, if you will, chief or whatever that makes a decision that his people are going to be deployed in this manner, we can all do that. But if we do that, then we just tear ourselves up. We can't function. And so that was kind of the genesis of my own Hell Week. And each of us go through that. I mean, each of us make decisions for our kids, for our loved ones, for things, whatever that happen. But, you know, if you keep that attitude, like, look, dude, it was their time. I got to move on. I got to, you know, use my assets, my resources to make it as good as I can. That's really what this book is about.
Yeah, and just to point out what Scott's talking about, he's talking about Chris Kyle and his book, American Sniper. And Scott, I just want you to know that it had nothing to do with you. All this had to do with, unfortunately, with somebody with some mental issues.
Right.
You know,
and I realized that after a while, but you just get that feeling like, oh, you know, shit, you know, what just happened, you know, like, you know, and I'm sure you felt it. I'm sure guys, you know, feel it all the time in your, you know, what your profession was before. You lose guys. I mean, it happens. It's a dangerous game.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, in you know, as a Navy SEAL, it's, you know, you turn one way and the guy behind you turns the other way. You know, if he gets shot, you're, you know, at the time you're not going to think it because, you know, you finish the fight. But, you know, later on, it's, well, wait a minute. Should I have gone that way? You know, it's, but yeah, you can't go back and, you know, question it.
Right. And I think this book is also the thing I like about Hell Week, you know, and beyond, was that it's about real people and real mental processes that you might not even realize, Chris, although you probably do because you've written about it and you've seen a lot of guys, but you don't understand how you guys have separated yourselves from the average person's thinking. And it's not because of the skill set that you were given or the, you know, ability to handle weapons or this or that or anything like that. It's all about the ability, that 6 inches between your ears that says, well, it might not work this time, but by God, I'm not dead. I'm not done. I can get back up. I can still deliver what I got to deliver. I have not quit. And at the end of the day, the book's message is, if you don't quit, you can't be beaten. You know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a good message for all of us right now. If we don't quit, I never beat this country.
Yeah. The book, you know, obviously I read the book and it's amazing and it's very realistic. And like you said, the thing about not quitting, I've been on every side of BUDS, you know, from going through to being an instructor, to being a motivator, to getting people to go in. And I worked with recruiters for, you know, years and talking to so many people. You know, the only thing that anybody, you ask a SEAL, you know, hey, what's it take to make it through? It's like, just don't quit.
Yeah.
Wait, it can't be that easy. Nope, that's it. Because, you know, as an instructor, I can tell you the only thing we're not trying to teach people anything. We're trying to get them to quit. That's it. And we push people to the point where, you know, they're going to be pushed beyond whatever their limit is. If they're an Olympic level swimmer, well, guess what? Get alongside this Zodiac and just keep swimming until you start drowning.
Yeah.
And if you want to quit, then great. If you start drowning, we know you're ready and we're not going to let you drown, but yeah, you're going to get pushed to whatever your limit is, and we just want to see if you're going to keep going.
Yeah. And so, no, thank you very much for your support of the book. And, you know, once again, you know, it's out for pre-order. It comes out in May, but I would really appreciate pre-orders. And look, you know, and it's not just for me, and I'm not doing this for a personal plug. I mean this. We need to support those authors, writers, speakers, you know, shows. Dan Bongino's show I really like. I mean, we need to support those people that are being marginalized and shut down right now as much as we can, you know, and vote with our readership, our viewership, whatever, our purchases, whatever else. We need to vote in that fashion because it's the only way we're going to get through this, because we need to have that support for our people in our country that believe in this country, because, you know, I mean, they are effectively shutting down avenues as we speak.
Yep. So I will put a link to Scott's book in the show notes, and below, if you're watching the video, it'll be below the video in here. So make sure you pre-order that. Again, it's Hell Week, coming out May 18th. So we're going to wrap this up. Any closing thoughts, Scott?
Well, it's a difficult time, but I am of the belief that we're going to come out of this stronger than what we went in. And while we have lost this presidency, and I'm not sure the means were valid. In fact, I have my questions that they were valid. The election and things of that nature. That being said, it is what it is. We must move forward. We must find ways to take the discussion to the opposition, not violently, but with the resolve that we are telling the truth and we do back this country. And, that people want to marginalize us, then they have to deal with, with the fact that there's 75 million of us minimum, that voted for this president. And there's several other 100 million, I believe, that believe in the ideals that this president put out. And that is that America is a great country. It's a great nation. It believes, and it is the light in the world. And we're about to see the darkness, I believe, getting stronger.
All right. So that is it for today's show. And let's just say that we need to keep fighting peacefully and patriotically.